What's up, freaks and geeks? So today we're talking about a topic that I never thought I would be talking about: fatigue management. Some people think that I just don't manage fatigue at all. I do. Fatigue management is something that you absolutely need to do, but there are a wide variety of ways that you can actually do it. So we're going to go through a bunch of different ways that you can manage your fatigue, and I look at this as just steering the ship. You can make big turns or small turns over time in order to get to where you want to go. The first and most extreme would be time off. Just time completely off training, out of the gym where you're not lifting weights at all. I do this about twice a year, sometimes once a year. I go back to my wife's hometown and I don't go to the gym at all for about 2 weeks, 10 days, somewhere around there. I actually still train during this time. I either go running or I use rings or I do just calisthenics movements in order just to stay active. I don't like being completely sedentary. It makes me viscerally uncomfortable, but this is a nice mental change of pace and it is a good way to drop your overall levels of fatigue. Don't be afraid of losing strength or losing muscle or anything like that. A week or two won't do anything, and in the grand scheme of things is probably good for your overall progress. However, I would say don't use this more than 1 or 2 times a year. If you find that you have to take a week off every month or something like that, that is really not going to be good for your overall progress. And I would say that is a sign that something is very wrong with your training. Or you have cancer or something.
Now that's fucked up.
Number 2 would be a deload. This can take many forms, but basically you're still going into the gym, but you are reducing the overall training stress in some way. Usually this is either going to be reducing the total number of sets that you're doing, so taking your volume down a notch or a few pegs, or this could be reducing the weight on the bar, or this could be just reducing your RPE.
I was at about 6 there. You don't want to see me go to 10.
So keeping more reps in reserve. Lots of ways to set this up. I would say if you are strength focused, you're going to want to reduce the weight just so you have a good touch on the bar.
Touching!
All right. If you are interested in bodybuilding, I am much more inclined to reduce the volume for most people. I personally don't really take formal deloads where it's just a week of lighter weights or a week of very low volume. I tend to use fatigue management strategies that I will describe a little bit later. Number 3 would be days off. So let's say you're doing a 5-day per week plan. You might just take a day off and either skip it entirely or just push the workouts back into the next week. With most training splits, you can have a training style where it's not just week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, but you can sort of just cycle through, say, upper 1, lower 1, upper 2, lower 2, and if you just want to push one back, you push it back, and you just do the days when you go into the gym. And so pushing them back can be a good way to manage fatigue on a more acute level. However, keep in mind that if you're on, say, 2 days per week full body versus training 7 days a week, 1 day off is going to have a bigger impact. So if you're doing like a 2-day per week full body, which I think is viable, if you skip a day, that is half your volume gone. Whereas if you're training every day, like I typically do, taking a day off doesn't really have a very big impact. Overall, I really do like this strategy a lot. I use it fairly frequently. If I feel beat up or if I feel slightly unmotivated, I just take a day off. For me, I'm always very motivated and driven. And so if I have a day where I'm just, kind of sluggish and not really feeling it, to me, that's a sign that it's okay to take a day off. Number 4 would be reps in reserve or RPE. I think this should be probably a default, especially on the bigger lifts. So something like a barbell back squat, a Romanian deadlift, to a lesser extent, a barbell bench press. These are big lifts, they're very stressful, and so I would say keeping a rep or 2 or perhaps even 3 in the tank is completely viable. And you can tweak this over time in order to get the amount of stress and stimulus that you want. So if you're feeling, maybe a little bit beaten up, you can keep more reps in reserve. That is totally fine. On something like an RDL, 4 reps in reserve is still absolutely doing something. On the other hand, if you're doing, a rear delt raise or a chest supported row, I think using reps in reserve is probably not a very good overall strategy. Yes, you will have lower fatigue if you keep more reps in reserve, but it's also highly possible that you're just not doing anything, especially when you're more advanced. I personally don't tend to take very many reps in reserve, partly because it doesn't jive with my personality. I don't like doing that. I like pushing myself. But also because I'm not that strong. If I was 50% stronger, I would be a lot more wary with the reps that I took. But since I'm not using massive weights, it's really not as big of a deal. By the way, big shout out to Boostcamp for sponsoring today's video. They are the long-term sponsors of the channel. You can log your progress in the app. You can check out some of the best programs on the internet. I myself have 2 programs up there, Rampage and Ravage. One is a 6 days per week program that I have personally used over the past year and a half to get the gains that I have gotten. And the other one, Rampage, is a 3-day per week full body training system. Both are hypertrophy focused. Results have been impressive. It's still pretty early days, but I'm already getting messages from people who have been getting those gains. So definitely check out Boostcamp if you want to use it. So I'll link that in the description, and thank you to Boostcamp for sponsoring this video. Number 5, speed days or explosive training.
I feel the need for speed.
So this is just training that is not nearly as stressful as typical bodybuilding training or even typical powerlifting training. These were popularized by Louis Simmons of Westside Barbell, and when asked if he could do 2 max effort days, he would say yes, he would do that if it was possible to recover from them. But since it wasn't for these very, very big, very, very strong lifters, they added this speed day instead. This keeps you in the groove. This keeps you with the same movement pattern. This keeps you moving well. This gets a lot of blood into the muscles, etc. And it's also training you, but it's not nearly as stressful. If anything, it is stimulatory. Doing 10 sets of 3 with like 40 or 50% of your 1 rep max, that is piss easy, but if you're really focusing on accelerating the weight, it is still going to be causing a positive training effect with much lower stress on the body, particularly the joints. I said the joints. There we go. There we go. However, it's worth noting that while these are super, super fun, for bodybuilding purposes, probably not doing very much. Number 6 would be changing movements, perhaps in a conjugate type of style. Again, this was popularized by Louis Simmons, and I think this is a good fatigue management strategy because usually the limiting factor, again, it's those joints. And so most fatigue is not actually systemic, nor is it actually muscular. It's your elbows, it's your shoulders, it's your lower back, it's your knees. These areas typically get beaten up first, and so they are what really benefit from a deload. Or they benefit from changing the movement pattern. So instead of doing a high bar back squat and then a high bar back squat again, you do high bar and then front squat, or high bar and then low bar, or you add bands or chains, or you change your foot position. For all of these big lifts, there are literally millions of iterations of combinations of lifts that you could actually do, which change the stress just enough to keep you healthy, in theory. This also keeps training interesting and fun. However, do keep in mind that it is certainly possible to have so many variations that you have no idea if you are getting better. If you have 50 different bench press variations that you're continually and constantly maxing out on, you really might not know if you're making progress. You might not know what correlates to what. You might if you have a lot of experience and you're extremely observant, but I would say for the average person in the gym, having fewer variations, enough variations to keep you healthy, but not that many variations, is probably a good idea. Number 7 would be daily undulating periodization. And so this is basically using multiple different rep ranges at different points of the week. So maybe you have a heavy day, a light day, a medium day, that type of thing. Now, I actually think this is kind of a misnomer because when I think of periodization, I think of changing your training over time to get a specific result at a specific time. So this isn't really periodization in my opinion. This is just reasonable training, basically. So you might have some days where you use like heavier 1 to 5, Some days 5 to 10, some days 10 to 20, maybe even some days 20 to 30. So using a variety of different rep ranges on different exercises can be a good way to get a different stress, a different stimulus, and sometimes a change is better than a break. Number 8 would be to auto-regulate your volume. So usually in my training plans, I have a set range, not just a rep range, but a range of sets that you can choose to do. So it could be 2 to 3 sets, could be 3 to 4, could be 2 to 4, could be 3 to 5, could be even like 2 to 6 based on how you feel. So if you feel good, if you're chomping at the bit, you can do a little bit more. If you're feeling fatigued or tired or even just banged up, you can do just 2 sets or just 1 set. I've had times where I was doing Romanian deadlifts, I did a really hard first set, and I could tell, based on my experience in the moment, that I had already done enough. Doing a second set would not have been useful. It would have been excessive, because that 1 set was hard enough that it got the job done. Why does my brain do this? Now keep in mind that you have to actually use autoregulation. When you see 2 to 3 sets, if you think, oh, 3 sets, you're doing it wrong, okay? Sometimes it should be 2, sometimes it should be 3. That's the whole point of having a set range, right? And you have to go by feel. And this is a lost art. This is something that a lot of people are losing the ability to do. They would rather read a meta-analysis than know in the moment what they should do, right? So having good decision making is something that is super, super important, and this is something that everyone needs to learn how to do, and that is part of the reason why I typically write in a set range to try to cultivate this ability. Number 9, another thing you could do is just go until the reps drop off or until you lose a certain amount of strength. I don't think this is a perfect system, but if you go until you have a predetermined amount of reps that you lose, like let's say you start and you have, a 5 to 10 rep range and you get 9 reps the first set, maybe you just keep doing sets until you drop below 5 reps, or you would drop below 5 reps. So maybe you do 9, 8, 7, 6, 6, 5, and then you're done, right? I don't see anything wrong with that. And if you lose fatigue or if you lose reps quickly, you go 9, 6, 4, then you just do fewer sets. And I actually first heard Mike Israetel say this, a 10% drop in strength is where beyond that you've probably done sufficient work in order to stimulate muscle growth. I don't know if there's any scientific basis for that, but in my experience that seems pretty reasonable. If you're only losing, 2 or 3% strength, did you even really train? But if you're losing like 15, 20, 30% strength, that is probably a bit too much. So 10% in my experience seems pretty much spot on. Number 10, and I will be doing a whole video on this because I think it is super, super important. Volume, intensity, frequency, progression, effort, and variability. You have to balance these. So some people think that I am just all out, balls to the walls, training as hard as possible, as much as possible. That is not the case. So for me, volume is high, so I'm doing a lot of sets, but loading and intensity are moderate to low. So I'm not super strong, so the stress per set is not all that high. My frequency is moderate, not super high, not super low, roughly twice per week. My progression is low. So I'm not adding weight to the bar as fast as I could. I am purposefully milking the same weights for a long period of time. My effort in proximity to failure is high, but my variability is low. So I'm not really introducing new movements very, very frequently. So based on my volume and based on my effort, yeah, those are super high, but the other variables counterbalance that. If I was doing high volume, a lot of stuff to failure and beyond failure, and also driving the progression really, really aggressively, that is a recipe to get fucked up. Okay, so you have to really balance these and know yourself. Know which variables you can and should push to the limit and which ones you should hold back on. In a lot of ways, training is trying to find this formula. Finally, and I would be remiss if I didn't talk about this because I think it's also super important, a lot of fatigue management is not actually caused by excess fatigue, by doing too much, by doing it too hard, but by your crap recovery. So people who don't know how to manage the stress, people whose sleep is dog shit, people whose diet is basically just Fritos and Mountain Dew, and they not getting in their protein, not getting in their fruits and vegetables. I'm always shocked by how many people barely eat vegetables. And then they're like, I can't recover. Wow, shocking, right? It's not what you're doing in the gym is too much. It's that your lifestyle kind of sucks. Go for a walk. Get some sunlight. Have a decent social life, but don't go out drinking and getting stoned all the time, right? Like, a lot of this stuff is really not that difficult, and a lot of people say that they are super committed to training, and maybe that's true during the hour and a half that they're in the gym, but as soon as they leave, whoosh, that commitment is just gone. So if you're really serious about this, you will put in the work outside of the gym as well. Anyway, for more information on training, you can check out my books. They will help you a ton on your fitness journey. There is a ton of information that I just haven't talked about on the channel. The videos are free, but I put my best information in the books because I'm not one of those bullshit marketers who puts the best information out there for free and then snags people in to get the book. No, the best information is in the books because that is logical and fair from my not very good marketing perspective. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.